Alrighty, back again. So we got a bunch of back-end stuff done. I realized on the break that there's actually at least one pretty important thing that we messed up and didn't include, which is that when someone purchases sponsorships for a podcast, we need to make sure that that purchase goes to the correct Stripe account. And right now we're not actually passing that as a parameter or doing anything like that. I also have some other ideas for how we're going to be able to clean up kind of this whole flow into a couple lines of simpler code by introducing another abstraction. So I'm going to skip over that for now anyways, because we've been kind of knee deep in the backend stuff all day. And I think it would be fun for a change of pace to work on some front end stuff. And we can kind of tackle that again later. So what I want to get into is basically building out this UI. So where should we start? I think the first thing to do is perhaps make a new route where we can just kind of build this as static HTML without worrying about kind of the underlying data and stuff. This is an approach I take pretty often. I'll just create like an endpoint, like mockup or something like that. And I'll just have this return that view. I think you can actually just do like route view now too, couldn't you? Can't you? Is that a thing? View, router. Yeah, that's cool. So we could just do like, we'll just have this go to sponsorable sponsorships dot new. So we'll just return that view, but we won't pass any real data to it, and we'll just kind of build it statically to start. Okay, so why don't we just pull that up here? Sponsorable, or what is it? It's a mockup. Yeah, what am I doing here? Okay, so we got an empty file. Yeah, let's kind of tackle it. So first thing is we need to generate our Tailwind config file, because I haven't done anything like that yet. Also, what is going on with our diffs here? Oh, we actually need to make a commit. A commit from the end of the last stream. Refactor to remove duplicate charge amount calculation. Yeah. Calculation. That'll do it. All right, cool. So let's, I've already got Tailwind installed. I just haven't generated the file. So we'll do Tailwind init, and I guess we'll just keep it in the root of the project. I've been experimenting lately with putting it in resources assets CSS, which I kind of like, but we'll stick with kind of the default setup here. So let's make sure that we pass in our path to our Tailwind config in our mix file here. And then I'm going to create a split here. And let's just get our watcher going. So with any luck, we should be able to at least see if we refresh this page and check out like the network or the elements even. It's currently empty. All right. So let's make sure that we'll copy this welcome template and use that as a starting point here. And just make sure that we get something here. Yeah, and that looks like it's using Tailwind's colors and all that stuff. Cool. So I have the colors extracted, ready for us to set up our config file. So give me 2 seconds. I don't know what I've got in my notes folder where I have that stored, and I might leak some private stuff. So I'm just going to switch to the placeholder screen for a second while I grab that stuff and paste that into the top of my Tailwind config file. And then I'll bring the stream back and we can kind of get into that. All right, so I think I got this stuff here now, and I can head back to the stream. And all right, here we go. All right, so we don't have a lot of colors, actually. We might need to introduce some more elements of the scale as we play around with things and like hover states and stuff like that. But currently, there's actually just these colors. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 colors. So let's kind of paste these in and replace some of the Tailwind defaults. So we don't need gray darker or dark. We got a much simpler grayscale, which is pretty nice. Right, grab this one. And gray light. And then indigo and indigo light. So we only have 2 of those. We actually have no reds, no yellows. We do have greens, but I think it's really just 1 green. So if anything, maybe we'll keep 3 and figure out what the other colors could be if we actually end up needing them. But for now, yeah, I think we'll just kind of roll with that. So I think I'll even comment these out. We'll just kind of keep them there just in case we decide we need them. So we'll grab indigo and indigo light. It's nice when you have a little bit of a reduced color palette like this. The Tailwind default one is really, really generous, which is nice for prototyping. But if you already have a design put together, your file size is going to be a lot smaller because typically it's very rare that you're ever going to need as many colors as Tailwind actually gives you. All right. So I think our greetings thing is going to look all messed up now. Yeah, we lost our color, which is fine. But yeah, it just shows us that our config stuff is working. So let's take a look at this layout and think about how we're going to want to slice it up. So this is supposed to be like a sticky footer that should kind of be there no matter what. So there's 2 ways that we could build that. We could either give it like position fixed and put it at the bottom of the screen. The only thing with that approach is we have to be careful to make sure that we have enough bottom margin underneath this area that, this is never going to be overlapping the last item in the list. The other approach is to use Flexbox and create like a full screen layout where we have a main div that takes up this much space using flex in the column direction. Then we have like a flexible container here that stretches to fill the available space. And then we have this fixed width one here. So then the only area that would be scrollable would be this. And like the scroll bar would actually stop here. Whereas with the fixed approach, it would actually go all the way to the bottom. I think I actually prefer using position fixed in this case because something that tends to happen with Flexbox layouts that's annoying is on first page load, if you've created like your own main content area, you can scroll it with the mouse, but if you try and scroll it with the keyboard, like using up and down as soon as the page loads, it doesn't work because that content area doesn't have focus. Like the body has focus, and the browser has no way to know that you actually want to be scrolling this one particular pane that you've created with Flexbox. So if we just use some boring old position fixed stuff for the bottom here, I think that will actually be a better approach. So let's start by thinking about how we're going to cut it up. So we're going to have this heading here. This stuff is all going to go into a view component eventually too, like this whole thing. But we'll start by just doing it in static HTML for now. Yeah, so I think the background is gray light. So why don't we set that up on our app? Actually, we'll do it here. Well, on this element, we'll do BG gray light, main H screen. This doesn't have to be flex or any of that stuff anymore. We'll just add kind of the basic elements. So which episodes would you like to sponsor? Now, I've mentioned before, I want to be able to use this for things besides just podcasts eventually, like newsletters and stuff like that. So eventually this text is going to have to be customizable or dynamic in some way because episodes doesn't really make sense for newsletters. But for now, we'll kind of just roll with the static stuff. We've been doing a pretty good job so far, at least naming stuff on the back end in a way that's a little bit less coupled to the podcast concept. It's a lot easier to just change some text on the front end than it is to rename a ton of classes and methods and relationships and stuff like that. So we'll get that in place here. There's going to be another div at the bottom where we have the position fixed stuff. So I'm kind of feeling like there's going to be a div that contains the H1 and the list, and then a div down here where we kind of have the one episode selected, so maybe we'll just do that in like a p tag. Maybe not a p tag, maybe like a span. One episode selected. And let's think. Think about how we want to lay this out. There's going to be some trickiness here in terms of how we get these like fixed widths and stuff happening, so everything lines up kind of like a table. So it's going to be a little bit more interesting than it seems. So I think the way that I want to cut this up is each one of these cards, and hence the footer as well, is going to need to sort of have like, I think I want to have this section as a div that has 2 columns in it, and then I want to have this section. I think that's going to make things easier. We'll have to see. So the footer is going to have a div with like BG white, and it looks like we got like a border T2. Border T2. It's going to be fixed. It's going to be pin B, pin X. And then we're going to have another div inside of it because this is going to be kind of our container. So it looks like we've got like a kind of like an arbitrary max width here of 620. So 620 divided by 16, because we're using rems, is 38.75. If we look at our tailwind.js file at our max widths, you see we have 40. So maybe we'll just set the whole thing to max width MD. That'll kind of be our container. So max width MD MX auto. And maybe we'll do like a horizontal padding of like 6, kind of pretty generous horizontal padding. We'll have a div here that contains 1 episode selected and also contains the 500 USD stuff. So we'll do like 500. I guess just div everywhere. USD. Maybe we'll make this a div. Why not? And then on the other side of this div, oh man, my voice is really going. On the other side of this, we need to have that button. So we'll put the button in a div too. And the button is going to say pay now, although we might change that. And let's make sure we give it a type of button. It's not inside of a form, so it won't matter, but I got bit by that early in my career because buttons default to submit. So if you have a button inside of a form element that's not meant to submit that form, you can have weird bugs if you're not careful. So what do we get here? So I mean, like, this is in the right spot, at least, down at the bottom. It looks like I can't see a border. And I should double check that I've even... Oh, yeah, Steve is using a shadow for this one. So maybe I can just use our gray color for that. Doesn't actually need to be a shadow. Let's see what that gives us. And it's a little dark. So we might actually need another gray in our scale. But maybe it's not too bad. Maybe we can just roll with that temporarily. Tailwind doesn't have CSS grid layout stuff built in because IE11 doesn't support it. So we didn't add it. But there is a plugin that I wrote as an example that you can check out in the Tailwind docs. I think if you go to tailwind.com or tailwindcss.com, plugins, example plugins, plugin repository. Down here, you can see there's CSS grid utilities. So it's not, you don't get the full power of CSS grid. CSS grid is really meant to be done in CSS using like a utility approach for it. You just don't have the same power and flexibility. But this is just an example of a simple plugin that kind of just mimics a Bootstrap grid, but using CSS grid as the implementation. For this sort of thing, though, you can just use Flexbox too, which is what I have been doing up until now. Okay, so we'll just roll with that color. We can add another one if we want. So why don't we do the same thing here? We'll have like a class of max width MD, MX auto, PX6 to kind of keep like a consistent container vibe. And I think the size on this is like 30, which I think is 3XL in Tailwind. So we'll just say class text 3XL. And we're also using Proxima Nova as the font here. So I think I'm going to add that to our sans serif stack. I have it locally, so we don't have to worry about setting up Typekit or anything right away, just to get things at least looking right. Okay. So 3XL, text center, font semi-bold, I think. I only really know this because I was working on the design myself. And it looks like we're going to want some like pretty aggressive vertical padding on this container. So why don't we throw like a P, maybe, yeah, aggressive vertical padding sounds like a good way to solve the problem down here too. So we're probably going to want to go bigger than Tailwind actually provides out of the box. So why don't we update our config to include some higher values? I typically like to add like 12, 16, 24, and even like 32. So 12 is 3 RAM, 4 RAM, 6 RAM, 8 RAM. And then I'll usually go and copy these across to margin and negative margin too, so that I have the same spacing scale across all of them. So for this, if we started with like PY, I don't know, 20, let's go 32. Let's go all the way. What does that give us? Like that actually doesn't seem too far off, honestly. If we look at this on a smaller screen, yeah, maybe we could do a little bit less aggressive than that, like 24 maybe. Yeah, it's not too bad. If we were to go to 16, how does that feel? Is that 2? I kind of like 16. Yeah, let's roll with 16. Okay. Next. So we want to do these kind of like card things, right? So let's just start by making one of them, and then we'll duplicate it and do the 3 states. So we'll start with like the selected state here. So I feel like we're going to want like a div here. I mean, maybe the right thing to do is to put this in a list and style them like list items. Is that the semantic thing to do? Maybe. I'm going to grab the Full Stack Radio logo. Let's copy the image address directly from my podcast site for now. The already sold state, I'm just not including ones that are already sold in the list right now. I do want to do that in a future update though. But for now, we're just like, it's only going to show episodes that are actually available. I think it would be better to show that though, because it kind of makes it look like, oh yeah, these episodes are really high in demand or whatever, right? So inside each one of these list items, we'll create a new div because these are going to be view components. So we'll make these like a little bit more portable this way. And looks like we got a corner radius of 10, very aggressive. So we'll do like BG white, rounded LG, shadow. What sort of shadow is on here? 2 and 4. Yeah, kind of like a pretty standard shadow. We'll do like a P4 maybe, something like that. And we'll just kind of see what we get here. So that's wider than I expected, if I'm being honest. Which I think is correct. I guess it's actually not too bad. All right. What size is this? I thought this was going to be 16 times 40. Didn't I make this 40 rem? Max width MD? Let's check the dev tools. I'm curious what is going on here. Oh, it's because there's the horizontal padding. Fair. Okay, we'll roll with it though, because the alternative is going to be too big, I think, because like 50 divided by 16, or sorry, 50 times 16, 800. We could add different sizes. I don't want to dick around with that too much. So we'll just try and roll with the defaults and see what we can put together. All right, so underneath this heading, I think we're going to want some margin, like 6 or something. What does that look like? Maybe more like 8. And let's grab that image again, because I think I've likely lost my clipboard, and I don't want to show my clipboard history. God knows what's in there. So the way I said I was going to do this is we were going to have a couple divs in here, right? One is going to have the image and a section for, I guess, 3 sections. One that's going to say like Full Stack Radio episode, 89 or something, whatever the next episode is. And then under that, we're going to say the date, so June 6th, 2018. And over here, we're going to have $500 USD. And then in this section, we're going to have a green check mark. So I believe I have that here. So here's like the filled check box. And what's 1.5 rem? So 6 class equals H6W6. And I think it's going to be text green. So, yep, that's there. So that's cool. This is obviously a disaster. That's what, 60 divided by 16, 3.75 rem. I don't know if we have a 3.75 rem size, but that's okay. We can pick something close. Maybe we just go with 4, or maybe we add like a 14 to at least get like a 3.5. I mean, we could add 15 and get 3.75, but not sure that I'm totally into that. Or maybe we just do it based on height or something. I don't know. We'll play with it here. So, all right. So let's set this whole container to display flex. We'll make this display flex too. And we'll do justify between. And now that I think of that, I actually think we actually want to have another div here, so that the image is in like the same container as the other stuff. There's a couple ways we could do it, but the way I'm doing it right now is basically this is a container which lives inside this container, where this will be a container, and that whole container lives inside this container where it shares some stuff on the right side here. Oh man, sickness is catching up with me. So that means this is also going to be display flex. And I guess we'll do items center, probably. And let's see what we get. Okay, so let's give this image a class of like H12, W12 maybe. What do we think of that size? 16 maybe? Let's see 16. I kind of think it's going to be too... I mean, I'm on a pretty big screen, so it's hard to know, but I actually think like that might be okay. Like that kind of looks pretty good to me, so I think I'll roll with that. I think we need to do... I think this was going to be 18-point text. And then I think this was going to be 14, if I remember the design correctly. So let's check. 14, 18. This is bold. Okay, so let's throw a good old font bold on there. Let's see where we're getting. Seems a little bit more aggressive than it looks in the mock-up, but it might be an anti-aliasing thing, although we might already have that set up. So it's fine. We'll do a little MR4 here, maybe 6. Let's try 6. 4. Yep. And I think Steve has rounded corners on the images too. Is it the same border radius as the other part? Where is the border radius even defined? He must have a, I don't know where he has that set up, mask here. So he's got a smaller border radius on that. So we'll throw a rounded, maybe like a block on here just to be safe, although it's in a flex container, so it doesn't matter, but it feels nice to be explicit and show that I understand what I'm doing. Okay, so that doesn't look too bad. I think we're going to want to set the color of the text down here to be like text gray dark, something like that. Yep. And now we're going to want to do the exact same style that we have here for the 500 USD thing, except here we need to align this text to the right in this whole container. So we'll update this to be 500. It's important that these are exactly the same styles because otherwise the text isn't going to line up properly. And it already doesn't line up, but that's because we need to add item center to this as well. So now you can see like we're getting the correct baseline on this stuff. Now everything is pushed right together, which is not what we want. So let's work on that. So this is also going to be justified between to push everything off to the side. And let's kind of look in the inspector for a second and kind of see what's going on. So it looks like this div, if we wanted to, we could have this fill the whole space, right? We could say like flex 1 or whatever, and that'll go all the way to the edge. But I don't think that is going to be the right approach here, because if different episodes have different lengths and stuff, things are going to get kind of funky. Although maybe not. Maybe it'll actually would work okay. Because really it's just the size of this that we need to force to a specific minimum. Now, the difficult part is going to be down here where this column is no longer having its size determined by an icon, because all these icons have the same size, right? So I think it actually probably is a better idea to give this whole thing like a percentage width of the whole thing maybe. Okay, so let's give this a width of, why don't we try 3/4 to start and try giving this one a width of 1/4 and just see where that puts things approximately. I mean, I think that's not too bad. I was trying to look at this text to compare the position of things, and I was missing a word here. So 500 comes to about the T and 2. I mean, that's pretty close enough for me anyways, that I'm not going to bother screwing around with that much more than that. Okay, so we'll just roll with that for now. Next step, let's get this icon in the right place. So it actually doesn't matter that we're doing this justify between thing anymore. We can trash that because we're using fixed widths that add up to 100%. So instead, I think what we're going to want to do is I can think of a couple ways to do this. We can make this display flex and do like so I'll show you what I'm talking about. A couple ways. We can do flex, justify end to push everything to the end. So that's one way to do it. Another way to do it would just be to make it text right and give this SVG an inline block style. Although that's going to maybe give it a, I mean, that seems like it would work. Another angle is to do display. I'm just trying to think, which one do I like best? I don't really like this inline block because you get like white space if you're not careful. So I think I'm going to do, I mean, you could also do flex row reverse. I think that's like another approach that would work. Where it just, yeah, it still goes at the very end. But I think the one that I like the best here so far is justify end. Flex, justify end. And also item center. And also, I think we want more padding on the right side of this container if we want to match the mockup. So instead of doing like P4 all around, we could do P4 and then PR8 and just kind of like override it, which I think is okay. Or alternatively, since that messes up the position of the dollar amount stuff, we could just add some padding to this element. Because if you look at what's going to happen here anyways, things are going to get kind of nasty. I guess like that actually doesn't get too bad. How much does, it's weird that this doesn't shrink at all, eh? So this is like a quarter. I kind of feel like I want this to flex down. Like it's kind of stupid that this is forcing that whole thing to move like that. But I can't think of a great way to solve that without using like basically a max width on this. We'd have to get like really creative with a lot of CSS stuff. That is maybe not worth it for this particular situation. It is a bummer though. I mean, the text wrapping, I'm not that concerned about. That can be solved with like, we'd use like overflow, like text overflow ellipsis to crop that down. But this part is kind of crappy. I kind of feel like the way that I would want this to work is that this side would shrink while this would stay in place until there's like a minimum sort of gap. So it might be that we actually want to, we almost want like a max width of, yeah, it's almost like we want a max width of a certain size. I wonder what happens if we try that. Just for argument's sake, let's say we did max width SM. I don't know if that size is going to be good. And here we did flex 1, so this is like a totally flexible container. So I think max width SM, is this going to be 30 rem wide right now? It's not. But if we also add W full, then it does fill up that space. And I think we'll get the effect that I wanted here, which is where that sort of shrinks down. So, I mean, that is not terrible. That is kind of okay. So what if we throw a little margin right on the side of this element? Yeah, the wider button thing is going to be a problem in some sense, but it might just be that I have to solve that by giving a min width to this section too. But actually you're right, like I can't ever let it get like this close. So maybe that whole thing is just wasted thinking. Yeah, because as this shrinks, the button is going to push that over. Yeah, you're right. Okay, I feel good about that. Cool. So I mean, like that's basically done from a desktop perspective. I don't want to worry about responsive stuff too much right now because we're just going to kind of get lost in the weeds and it's going to take up too much of our time. Now, one thing that we might want to do is, since there's going to be a hover state adding a border, we might want to have an invisible border on all of them so that changing the border color doesn't cause any weird problems. But for now, let's just duplicate this whole thing and kind of put together the, you know what? If it's a hover state, then we can just do it all right here. And why don't we just go ahead and put like, so this is going to be, we'll comment out this one and we'll add this icon, which is the add outline icon. And I'll grab this class because we're going to want it the same size at least. Okay, so now we got like this green icon here, which is not what we want, but it'll start gray. And this is kind of interesting because we actually have to change this icon on hover to be a different icon. That's kind of neat. We're gonna have to do some interesting things to solve that. It's actually not that crazy, but we can do some interesting Tailwind stuff. So let me think about how I want to solve it. We'll use the display property. So Tailwind has this feature called Group Hover, where I can say that this div is the group, and this gray thing should be block group hover hidden, and this one should be hidden group hover block. And if we set this, I guess that's got to be a different icon actually, add filled. Grab this. And this will be text indigo. And if I did this right, yeah, you can see that on hover, we're able to get that icon to show up no matter where we hover on the whole card, which is cool. Ugh. All right, so let's also add the border on hover. So on hover, I think we want to go hover border indigo light, and we want it to have a 2-pixel border by default, which I think is going to come out as invisible, but whatever. So we'll say border transparent by default. And I think we'll do select none on this whole thing, so you can't highlight things, and we'll do cursor pointer. Yeah, so something like that. That's kind of like the overall vibe, I think. So why don't we just do a little for each range 1 to 4 as I, just so we can get a couple of these on the screen so we can kind of mock this up more realistically. Okay, so we're going to want some margin underneath each one. Less than that. And here, why don't we just, for argument's sake, render this as 89 plus I. So it kind of looks realistic, even though the dates are all the same. Right? That's kind of neat. Again, not going to worry too much about the responsive thing. That could be like a whole other stream because we only got a couple hours to get this whole product done. So let's work on the footer now. And then once we get the footer done, I think we can jump into, we'll get this little logo thing up top. And then we can also start scaffolding out this modal. Okay, cool. All right, so we got some text here that's 18 pixels, so large. So down here in our footer, we'll give this a class of text LG. And it's probably the right color already. I think this, basically we got to mimic the Flexbox structure that we had above. So this is going to be flex, justify between items center. This is going to be class equals flex, justify end items center. And we need another div. And this is the one that actually needs to have this stuff. Although I wouldn't be surprised if it's the same below as well. Okay, so now this element has to be width 3/4, width 1/4. And then we want to use this same styling here. If you wanted to do fade in color change stuff with Tailwind, there's a plugin for doing transitions. We plan to add it to Core eventually, but it's not in Core yet. So that is coming eventually, but you can just write your own CSS for that for now. And we do have a lot of documentation about extending Tailwind and adding your own CSS, so it's not a weird thing to do with Tailwind or anything like that. All right, PY. Is that too aggressive on the padding? Maybe a hair. The other option is 4, which might not be enough. So I'm also curious, how's our scrolling situation? I think we need a little bit more bottom padding. So let's sort that out quickly. So we'll do PT16 and like PB24 maybe. Yeah, that feels pretty good. So if we were up here on this super tiny screen or something, we could scroll down and see everything. And that's looks pretty good to me. Cool. All right, so let's do this Pay Now button. So that's going to be class. I think it's going to be like rounded, like PX6 maybe, PY3. Text, what's the text size on it? 18, so LG, and it's bold. So text LG, font bold, text white, rounded, BG indigo, hover BG indigo light, something like that maybe. That's a little bit aggressive on the hover state, but it's not too bad. It looks like we want this button to be smaller. So maybe we go PX4, PY2. It might. What do I think about that? Doesn't look too bad. I think it needs to be a little taller and a little wider, which is a little awkward, but one trick that we could use there is maybe use letting normal to get a little bit of extra height. But now it's a little not right either. If we wanted to, we could do like a PX5 and we could go over to our Tailwind config file and look for that. A lot of people seem to want 5. Maybe we will include it out of the box going forward. Let's try it out at least and see how it feels. I mean, I think that actually feels kind of close to, it's not quite rounded enough. Let's try rounded LG, but I think that's going to be too much. Yeah, let's look at our rounded corners stuff. Border radius. So we got 0.25 rem, 0.5 rem. I think Steve was using like a 6 pixel, which is kind of like a nice number. So it's 0.375. And then he was using 10 as well, which is 0.625. So maybe we'll bump everything up a little bit here. And yeah, maybe that'll be a little bit closer. Whoa, that's aggressive. Need to revert this to rounded regular. Okay, so I mean, that looks pretty good. So that's kind of like a pretty easy little UI to build. So why don't we slap the old logo up there? So I think we're going to want to do that probably here. We're probably going to want an absolute position div. That's like pin T, pin L. And we got a little boat icon here. So it's not going to be a real logo per se. It's like literally an icon, and then it's going to say sponsorship next to it. But yeah, it'll be all right. So that's obviously terrible. And what size is this boat? 16? All right. So class H4, W4. We got a text size of 16, so that's text base, so that's okay. We'll throw it on a span just so we can manipulate the color of it. And yep, now I think we're going to want to basically add a div here. That's display flex, of course. And probably throw a little PR2 or something on that. And it looks like the logo is supposed to be bold. So throw the old class font bold on there. And I can't remember for sure. It looks like the colors are, the document colors aren't here. 465568. 465568. 465568. So that's black. And then this one is 90A, which doesn't exist. I might have done this on my laptop. Let me check my laptop because I believe I did a bunch of color extracting here. Good thing I got two machines good to go here. So it looks like for the ship, I made that 707 D8D. So gray dark. So black and dark. And then the whole thing is faded out using a opacity. And I think it's just 50. So we can just do opacity 50 on this whole thing. And that doesn't look right. Flex, no, shrink. Why, little boat, are you so small? Oh, what am I doing? It's not P, margin. Made a CSS framework, don't know how to do anything. Yep, you got it in the chat. Thank you. It's too bad the stream is a little bit delayed compared to the chat. Otherwise, I'd be able to get your helpful insights quicker. This is black, not dark. What am I talking about? Not that it matters. Okay, so then on this whole thing, I think I just want basically like padding of 6 or something. Maybe a padding of like 4. So, I mean, yeah, whatever. Seems fine. And in theory, this would be like a little link to the home page or something like that, which it's currently not, but it's fine. I think we could probably tighten the spacing up a little bit. It kind of seems like the logo could be lighter, but I bet you if I go all the way gray, it's going to be too much. Yeah. That's fine. We'll roll with that. Okay, so that's kind of like the main layout. So let's commit that. All right. So I won't commit this route, but I will commit like this general stuff here. Okay. Add basic static layout for sponsorships new page. Okay, so I think the next piece is going to be, let's build out the modal layout. And after we've built out the modal layout, I think what we'll do is we'll take another quick break and do our view stuff after that. Kind of get this actually working. All right, so to do that, I think what I'm going to do is add a another div down at the bottom here. This is going to go into a view component eventually too. But we'll just do like class equals position or fixed pin bg. Doesn't really need anything. What did I use for the background color here? I used a 15% opacity black. So two approaches we could take with Tailwind here. One is to use like an absolute position div plus opacity to set the background color. Another option that most people are probably like more comfortable with is setting like some transparent colors. So we might do something like, black 20 and make this just be like RGBA 000 0.2 sort of thing. All right, so we'll just use that value for now. It makes me want to have a bunch of them, but I'm never going to use full-on black, but it's nice to have like the semi-transparent ones. I don't like this step. I don't want to do steps of 10. Steps of 20 maybe is not too terrible. Like something like that. 20, 40, 60, 80. I don't like to have just one random value. I like to feel like things are part of a system. Okay, so let's just give this a BG black 20. And in theory, we should see it, but I'm wrong. So is BG black 20 not working? We probably got a JavaScript error here. Yeah, I guess this isn't CSS, so it's probably important that I wrap these in quotes. Okay. And then maybe just run this again. All right. Still not compiling. Oh, there we go. All right. So we can just comment out this whole container as we go. So with these modal things, I'm always like, I'm always trying to decide, like, does it make sense for it to be like vertically centered on the page? And I'm pretty sure the answer to that is usually no. I think like what you want is like a minimum vertical padding at least. Let's play with it. Say we made this display flex, justify, center, item center, but like a PT24 or something. And then inside of here, we had like a .bg white, .p4, hello sort of thing. What do we get? So that's centered with vertical padding at the top, which is crappy. So I don't really want there to be, I'm trying to think, is there a clever way to do this? Basically, this is getting pushed down right now, but I don't really want it to. I only want there to be like padding if necessary. You know what I mean? So I want this to be centered, but I want it to be at least X pixels away from the top of the screen. I'm pretty sure if I try and do that with margin, that's not going to work. Like if I get rid of this, but I add like an MT24 here, like it still pushes it down. So that's kind of annoying. I wonder if there's a way to do that. The only way I could think is by also adding padding to the bottom of the screen, but I don't want there to be padding at the bottom of the screen. Yeah, if you do top and bottom though, it'll force the thing to be too small, even though actually I guess it would be fine, right? Yeah, it would be fine. Yeah, what am I talking about? Yeah, maybe we'll just do like 16. Alex, I just want it so that as the screen shrinks, I don't want the modal to go to the very top if the screen gets like too small, if that makes sense. I want it to kind of be like trapped in between like this area. But in reality, I bet you I actually don't even want as much as I think I do. I bet something like that is probably fine. I could probably even just do like straight up padding 6 on the whole container. And yeah, I mean, that's probably going to be good. I don't think you could do vertical media queries without JavaScript, as far as I know. Okay, so complete your purchase. Proxima Nova 20 semi-bold. Okay, so let's throw the old, I guess it's an H2 maybe. Complete your purchase. Class, font, semi-bold, text XL, text black, although that's the default, but we'll still do it. And we'll do text center. Then underneath that, we have this like form where we'll just have that go nowhere with a method of post. And it's not actually going to get submitted, but it's still kind of nice to have. You can do a min height media query, eh? That's interesting. That's pretty cool. I'm not going to write that media query though, but I didn't know that. So I guess it makes sense when you think about it. All right, so here we got company bold 14. The color, I think, is just the black color. So we'll do a div. We'll make it a label because I hate doing this label 4 thing. I hate always having to put IDs in there. So I'd rather just have the whole thing wrapped in a label with display block. And then do a span here that says company. And then an input defaults to text, so we don't need that, with a placeholder of Digitechnosoft Inc. And yeah, then we'll just try and style that. So this is size 14. So we'll go class equals text SM, and it's bold. If I could type, what a world that would be. Okay, and I think we need some rounded corners on this thing. What does Steve got here for us? He's got 8, so he's introduced yet another value. Son of a bitch. So we'll just go with... I don't know which one we'll go with. Maybe if we use more padding. Yeah, I mean, this will probably be okay. I think we're probably going to also give this a min width of, or maybe like a max width SM, something like that. And a W full. And maybe XS. I mean, that seems like probably a good size. Yeah, and a drop shadow. So we'll give this a shadow. I think it's a large shadow. Yeah, that's pretty good. Okay, so this input is going to be a block input. This span, I mean, I guess we'll make it a block level span with a margin bottom of like 2. This will have like a BG gray, light, rounded, something like that. Probably like a PX4, PY2. Probably like a width full, because I don't think they're width full by default, even when you make them display block. The background is very subtle, so that might be worth rethinking. Let's add some margin underneath the heading. And let's make sure we're looking at the sketch thing at the full size. And why don't we, just for I guess maybe just to try and keep things sane here, to make it easier to switch between these, see if we can get the dev tools. It's not going to be close enough, but it's fine. So I guess maybe we actually want to make this wider. So instead of max with XS, let's go back to max with SM. And maybe we'll just give it some more aggressive horizontal padding. Looks like Steve's actually got it even more aggressive than that. 12? 12 is too much, and we don't have a 10. So maybe we will just stick with 8. I think we need to set the text color on this input to something because it looks brown. Yeah, there we go. All right, and it looks like the inputs should be a little taller than they are. So a couple of tricks we could try there. Letting tight, I think, is actually going to make it taller already. But we might just want to go with letting normal. I mean, that looks pretty good. Although, yeah, that gray is really hard to see. So I think we're going to want to play with that color a little bit at some point. Or even just add like a little, I don't really want to add a border, but if we did a border gray, like that's way easier to see, but it's ugly. Okay, so I think that's fine. We'll make it a little bit darker at some point. So let's add the other 3 fields. The third one is going to be stripe elements, so we'll have to figure that out. I've done it before, but yeah, it will take a little bit of figuring out. And let's see, your name at yourcompany.com. Cool. So next is the credit card. So let's copy that. Thankfully, the way Stripe Elements works, it's actually really easy to basically you just like take these same styles, throw them on a div, and then throw Stripe Elements inside of that div. And Stripe Elements has no styles on its own, really. So it ends up looking just like your other inputs without a lot of effort. And okay, so now we got a pay button. So let's create a div here with a button. We probably could have made it different, but we'll make this one actually be a submit button. Let's put some hard-coded text in there. Let's grab the styles from the other button that we have. I think the text size and stuff is different. This looks bigger, 18. So we'll probably see that here. I mean, maybe we're actually using 18 already. We probably were. Okay, so this is going to be block with full. And I think that looks pretty decent. And then we got to throw some help text under it. I think we need a little bit more space between there and there, but I'm not sure if we need it between all of them. I don't know. I think we might have to just have to try it out. If we did 6 on this one, is that going to be too much? I mean, it doesn't feel too bad, actually. Then under the button, we have some text, like a paragraph. Rounded twice? Oh, yeah, cool. I just wanted it to be really rounded. And we'll just copy this text. So that's 16 in text gray dark, I think. So text base, we don't need that. It's the base color. And I think letting normal for this probably. And text center. And we probably want some MB4 at least action going on here. And I mean that looks like a pretty good start, really. It's not perfect in terms of the size, but that's too small. So if we wanted to, we could sort of fine tune these values. I think what I want to do for the next version of Tailwind, the next major-ish version, is change this max width scale. In hindsight, it's dumb that they just go up by 10. Feels like they should be clustered tighter together at the bottom, and then progressively the difference should be bigger as we go. So I have to play with some values there to see what makes sense. But I think in general, that's pretty good for a first start at this template. So the only thing that's kind of missing here is when someone presses this, probably we need to get like a little spinner or some text to replace it or something. And then once that's done, we'll probably just have this same modal just display like a thank you message or something instead of what it's displaying here. And that'll kind of be the whole MVP version of the app once we get the view stuff done and once we get to actually talking to Stripe. So take a break for 5-10 minutes and we'll hop back into this and turn this into a real view component and start populating it with real data from the server at some point. We'll probably start with static data and then slowly replace that static data with real server data. So yeah, anyways, thanks for sticking with me, and I'll see you in 5-10 minutes for the next episode. See you, everyone.